He used to be an outsider, the breath of fresh air, the one who got it. He said all the right things, felt like one of us, and promised to tear down the walls that kept the people out. Then he won, and something strange happened. The magic faded, the charm evaporated. The person who seemed so connected, so real, started looking disconnected, out of touch, almost alien. We've seen it happen over and over, from presidents to prime ministers, from boardrooms to corner offices. The charismatic visionary becomes the embattled leader. The people's champion becomes just another politician. Why? Welcome to the plasma state. In this episode, we are exploring something different. Not policy, not scandal, not the theater of governance. We are exploring the invisible transformation that happens when a human being crosses the threshold from outsider to insider, when they move from the crowd to the throne. It's not conspiracy. It's not just about corruption or broken promises, though those play a part. The answer lies deeper, in the architecture of the human mind, in the hidden currents of consciousness, in the subtle, devastating ways that power rewires the brain. This isn't politics. This is neuroscience. This is psychology. And what we're about to uncover will change how you see every leader, every boss, every person in power for the rest of your life. Let's start with a simple question. What does it feel like to be a leader? You wake up at 5 a.m. Before your first coffee, 3 crises demand your attention. By breakfast, you've made decisions affecting millions. Before lunch, you've chosen between 2 bad options on a topic you barely understand, while 100 experts shout conflicting advice in your ear. And that's just Tuesday. In the 1950s, the CEO of a major company had 5 to 7 major goals. By 2014, between 25 and 40. Political manifestos have exploded from hundreds of words to tens of thousands. The result is something psychologists call cognitive compression. When leaders make too many decisions without adequate support, their cognitive capacity narrows. Judgment becomes harder to sustain. The brain begins taking shortcuts. Think of it like juggling. Outside power, you watch from the audience. You see the whole picture. You listen to the crowd. You have no boundaries. You're one of them. In power, you're on stage, managing 30 balls, managing competing factions, advisors with agendas, a media dissecting every word, a public expecting miracles. Your mind is now handled by others. They filter what reaches you, frame your choices, manage your narrative. Somewhere in that noise, the direct connection to the people you once served vanishes. But something more insidious is happening beneath the surface, something biological. Dacher Keltner at UC Berkeley spent 20 years studying power's effect on the brain. His findings are chilling. People given power, even for 5 minutes, showed measurable changes. Less empathy, weaker perspective-taking, greater impulsiveness. In one experiment, participants drew the letter E on their foreheads so someone else could read it. Those feeling more powerful were 3 times more likely to draw it so they could read it, failing completely to take the other person's perspective. Keltner called this the power paradox. The qualities that help us gain power, empathy, social intelligence, collaboration, are precisely what power destroys. Sukhvinder Obhi at McMaster University looked at the brain itself. He found that power impairs mirroring, the brain's empathy engine. When we see someone in pain, our brain activates the same regions as if we were in pain ourselves. When someone smiles, we smile back, automatically. But in people with power, mirroring dramatically reduces. Their brains literally stop simulating others' experiences. Power acts like a kind of brain injury. It makes people more impulsive, less risk-aware, and critically, less able to see things from another's perspective. Historian Henry Adams described power as a tumor that eventually kills the sympathy of its victims. He wasn't being metaphorical. He was describing a neurological reality. The leader who seemed so relatable starts looking like an alien. It's not an act. It's a fundamental change in how their brain processes the world. Kissinger said power is the ultimate aphrodisiac, but aphrodisiacs intoxicate. They distort perception. They make you forget what it felt like to be without it. And when you forget what it's like to be powerless, you stop being able to lead the powerless. Psychologists call what happens next the hubris arc. A visionary leader emerges, exceptional confidence, challenges the system, offers simple solutions. Early successes bolster belief in their own transformative power. Self-criticism diminishes. Viktor Orbán in Hungary, once a liberal Democrat who challenged communist rule, now controls 90% of Hungarian media and packed the Constitutional Court. Recep Tayyip Erdogan in Turkey, initially praised for showing democracy and Islamic governance could coexist, for lifting millions from poverty. Now he has turned Turkey into a competitive authoritarian regime.
Lately, President Donald Trump in the United States, his approval rating fell sharp within a year. He was elected for a second term.
As visionary capacity increases, so does myopia. Seeing a singular path with exceptional clarity necessitates narrowing one's perceptual field. These leaders succeed because their focus cuts through paralysis. But they hit an inflection point, accept institutional constraints as necessary feedback, or redefine them as obstacles. Too often they choose the latter. The echo chamber forms. Flattery intensifies. Subordinates shield them from uncomfortable realities. The leader becomes isolated not physically, but cognitively. Their sense of reality distorts. Judgment impairs. Psychiatrist David Owen diagnosed Hubris Syndrome in Thatcher, Blair, and Bush. Few leaders survive more than 10 years in power without being tipped into this state. Exaggerated pride, overwhelming self-confidence, contempt for others, overestimation of competence. The cruel irony, those who need honest feedback most become least capable of receiving it. And this explains something else, something we see again and again. Why do leaders in power hate strong institutions? Why do they attack courts, constitutional bodies, independent media, election commissions? Because institutions are constraints. They say no. They slow things down. They demand accountability. They remind the leader they are not above the law. To a leader already suffering from cognitive compression, reduced empathy, and distorted reality, institutions feel like enemies, not safeguards, obstacles, threats to their vision. When they look at a judge who strikes down their decree, they don't see a check on power, they see an adversary. When they look at a free press that questions them, they don't see a vital feedback mechanism, they see an enemy. When they look at a constitution that limits them, they don't see the scaffolding of democracy, they see a cage. This is why autocrats always go after institutions first, not because they're evil, because power has changed their cognition so profoundly that they genuinely can no longer perceive institutions as anything but barriers. They lose the capacity to understand that those institutions exist precisely because human beings are fallible, precisely because power corrupts, precisely because the person in charge will eventually need to be checked.
They can no longer see themselves as the kind of person who needs checking. But let's be honest, it's not just the leader's fault. We play a role too. The expectations gap. We elect leaders with impossible hopes. We expect them to fix everything perfectly, immediately. Research shows presidential expectations widen over each term. We want more, faster, better. When leaders fall short, we turn on them with remarkable speed. In the past, deference gave leaders space. Today, hostility and incivility are routine. The UK has had 5 prime ministers in a decade. CEOs ousted faster than ever. Tenures have become, in Hobbes's words, nasty, brutish, and short. We expect leaders to work on dozens of objectives simultaneously. Cutting taxes means cutting services. Being decisive means alienating someone. But we don't want trade-offs. We want solutions. Outside power, you can promise everything. Inside power, every yes is a no to someone else. Every choice has consequences. And the charm evaporates, not because the person changed, but because the context changed. And we refuse to acknowledge that context. Now let's go deeper, to the level of consciousness itself. Political psychologists speak of the expansion of consciousness. People in power, constantly exposed to scheming and manipulation, become immune to it. They stop noticing distortions. Outside power, consciousness is expanded, attuned to the full spectrum of human experience. You listen, you feel, you connect. Inside power, consciousness contracts, handled by a handful of people, managed like a juggler with too many balls. The direct connection to reality lost. The leader gets lost in the noise. The signal, the raw, unfiltered voice of the people, drowned out by the static of governance. Overwhelmed, they mistake the noise for the signal. The things that made them charismatic, their connection to people, their ability to feel what others feel, their sense of being one of us, are precisely the things power destroys. Power is earned through empathy. It is lost through self-serving behavior. The qualities that get you to the top are the qualities power takes away. A cycle, a trap, repeating generation after generation. So the question is it inevitable? Power changes the brain, narrows attention, reduces empathy, creates arrogance, isolates. But some leaders resist. Franklin D. Roosevelt, born privileged, could have been the ultimate out-of-touch elite. But every year he spent a month in Warm Springs, Georgia, swimming with other polio patients, most from lower classes. He listened to their struggles. He never forgot them. At his funeral, a mourner collapsed. When asked why he was so devastated, he couldn't fully explain, but he felt it. Roosevelt had maintained something power usually destroys: genuine connection. Research shows effective leaders are aware of their biases. They seek input from those who see things differently. They challenge their own thinking. Those who survive the hubris arc actively build systems for honest feedback, formal channels for dissent, diverse advisory teams. They recognize the bubble is dangerous. The echo chamber is a trap. The people who tell you what you want to hear are not your friends. They are your enablers. So the real answer, the cure, is twofold. First, build strong institutions, courts that are independent, media that is free, constitutions that are enforced. These are not obstacles to leadership. They are the guardrails that keep leaders from driving off the cliff. They serve the same function as a caring friend who says, you might want to reconsider. Second, develop leaders who understand this cognitively, who consciously fight the pull of the bubble, who actively choose discomfort, who seek dissent, who never stop listening to the people who have no power. When institutions are strong, leaders are forced to remain grounded, politically. When leaders are self-aware, they can remain grounded cognitively and consciously. The moment we put someone on a pedestal, we set them up to fall, and ourselves up for disappointment. The magic was never in the person, it was in the possibility, the hope, the belief that someone somewhere could make it different. Maybe the real tragedy isn't the leaders lose their charm, it's that we keep believing the next one won't. What do you think? Have you seen this pattern in your own life, with bosses, with leaders, with anyone who gained power and seemed to change? Drop a comment below. And if you want to go deeper into the psychology of power, check the links in the description. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Because understanding power isn't just about understanding them, it's about understanding us. That's all for this episode. We'll discuss on another interesting topic in the next one. Till then, keep your inner light on.